Hello, my name is Jeremy Houck, and I'd like to thank you for making the choice to join us here at the Greenbrier Church Online. My friend Dan Loftus used to tell the story about his new neighbors. Once the moving truck left, Dan wanted to welcome this new family into their neighborhood, so he made them an apple pie, walked next door, and introduced himself. He said they were a lovely young couple, and he had a very pleasant conversation with them. The next Friday, Dan was in the kitchen baking again and thought he would just make the neighbors another pie. He was hoping to forge a really good relationship with these new neighbors. And when the lady of the house answered the door, she was very grateful and she thanked them. And they talked for a little bit longer, and Dan went back home. The third week comes rolling around, and we're going to have a potluck at church. And so Dan's getting ready for the potluck and decided to bake another pie for his new neighbors. He walked across the yard, knocked on the door, and the lady of the house greeted him again, and they had a small conversation. She thanked him for the pie, but in that conversation, she just mentioned that her mom's pie crust was a little flakier, and she offered to share the recipe with Dan. The fourth week, Dan is in his kitchen, and he thought, I'm just going to make him another pie, but he ran out of apples, so he made them a cherry pie. He goes next door and delivers the pie. And this time, when he knocks on the door, the man of the house opens the door, greets him. They have a conversation. Dan hands the gentleman the pie, and he looks at the pie and he says, Oh, cherry. I'm so thankful that you brought cherry. I was getting a little tired of apple pies. Dan went home. The fifth week, Dan didn't make a pie. And that evening, somebody rang his doorbell. He answered the door, and it was the woman from next door. And before he could even say hello, the woman said, Where's our pie? We're having company over tonight, and we don't have dessert. Dan simply replied, I only make pies for people that are grateful. And he shut the door. Whether we acknowledge it or not, it's easy for us to get accustomed to our blessings and to begin to take them for granted. After we enjoy them for a little while, we begin to think that we deserve these blessings without question because, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. And we find ourselves getting frustrated and even angry when the situation changes and we don't receive those blessings. Instead of being thankful, we complain, we gripe, we fuss. And unfortunately, all too often, we become blind to our own ingratitude, and sometimes the people that are the most blessed are actually the most ungrateful. I probably tell you every year that Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Not because of the turkey and the cranberry sauce, even though I think that's a really great part of the tradition. But the reason that I love this time of the year so much is that Thanksgiving is one of the few holidays that we have that has not bought into this idea of consumerism. Sure, it's a big time of the year for Butterball, but how do you commercialize a holiday that is centered on us being grateful and thankful? We get hit with costumes and candy at Halloween, and then Christmas comes along and it takes everything else. But Thanksgiving is that holiday when we're giving the time to reflect and to be grateful. And I understand that for a lot of folks, Christmas is a big business. And I have some friends who own stores, and Christmas is what they rely on to keep their store open for the rest of the year. I've also heard that some of you watching today are already getting ready for Christmas, and you've made sure that the blinds at your house are pulled down really tight so that your neighbors can't see that you've already decorated your Christmas tree. But I want us to spend this season thinking about all the things that we have to be grateful for. So, over the next 4 weeks, we're going to take some time to talk about four different things that we might be guilty for taking for granted. Today, I want to spend some time talking about our greatest blessing, which at times can also be our greatest frustration. We want to begin with this blessing because I've discovered it's the one that it's the easiest for me and for us to take for granted. So, let's talk about our need to be thankful for our families today. From the start, I want to acknowledge that not everybody has a great relationship with their families. Maybe you have a difficult history with your family because you've experienced more painful moments than joyful moments. Maybe your family is structured in such a way that it not only has its share of high points, but it also has a lot of low points, and you tend to over focus on those low points. Today, I want to take a minute to look at our families and to talk about why we should be grateful and how we can build a family that's worth being thankful for. We need to remember that God designed our family to be a blessing to his kingdom and to love the people that he loves. One of the greatest reasons we have to be thankful is because of what our family can become in spite of its occasional failures. God had a purpose and a plan for families, even your family. All families are important to him. They're a part of his design for this world. Chuck Colson writes that the family is the first school of human instructions. Parents take small, self centered monsters who spend so much of their time screaming defiantly and hurling peas on the carpet, and they teach them how to share, how to wait their turn, how to respect others' property. These lessons translate into respect for others, into self restraint, obedience to the law. In short, into the virtues of individual character that are vital to our society's survival. Your character is a result of the family that raised you. God's intention is that your family will be the introduction to how he deeply loves you and cares for you. Your worth is formed by your family. It's the place where you discover all of your talents and gifts that God intends for you to share with the world. But even deeper than that, your family should be the place where you learn that you can be forgiven when you failed. It's what parents model for their children. It's where our kids discover what God is like and how he relates to us. It's where our children learn obedience so that they will understand what it means to obey God. Home is where we learn who God is and we learn how to love God. Home's where we learn how to live with other people and how to take them into consideration. And all of this is God's intent and his design. And when our families are acting the way that God intended for us to act, we will be able to find this abundance of things to be thankful and grateful for. In essence, we need to be thankful because our homes act as our first and greatest school for life. It's in the family that we find out how to be successful and what success really means. So let me share a few reasons that I believe that we can be thankful for our families. And if what we talk about today has not been your history, I'm sorry. I pray that you will be able to discover the type of family that you want to have so that you can pass on a better legacy for your children and your grandchildren. But first, I think we need to be thankful for our families because the family is where we learn about healing. When we've been wounded by the world, the home should be a place of retreat. When you've been beat up by the world, the home is the place where you should be built up. Both adults and children need someone who believes in them when nobody else does. We don't need to be called names at home after we've been called names at school. We don't need to be yelled at home after being belittled at work. When we've been wounded out in the world, our home is the place where our wounds are supposed to be mended, where our hurts are supposed to be healed. We need to learn how to restore each other, to restore our relationships. I think this is how God wants our families to operate. We continue to believe in the people in our home. We continue to pull them in rather than push them away. We heal each other rather than hurt one another. We look for the good in spite of our past performances. Home is the place where we find real, true love. Paul reminds us of the nature of the love that we should have for each other when he writes, "Love is very patient and kind, never jealous or envious, never boastful or proud, never haughty or selfish or rude. Love does not demand its own way. It's not irritable or touchy. It doesn't hold grudges and will hardly even notice when others do it wrong. It's never glad about injustice, but rejoices whenever truth wins out. If you love someone, You will be loyal to him no matter what the cost. You will always believe in him, always expect the best of him, and always stand your ground in defending him. Does that sound like what happens in your family? Your home is supposed to be the place where you can be loved and where people are patient and compassionate with you. God designed your family to be forgiving, to be loyal. But that's not just how your family's supposed to treat you, it's specifically how you are supposed to treat every member of your family. You have a personal responsibility to make sure that your family is a place of thanksgiving. Now, I understand you have family members who are a mess, maybe even a lost cause. They've made life altering mistakes, they're broken. But God has given us families as a place where we can find the space and the grace to be healed and restored to life. And that's a reason we should be thankful. The second reason that we can be thankful for our families is because the family is where we learn about our value and our worth. We first learn about our worth to God because we discover the worth that we have in our family. Your family doesn't accept you because of your performance. They accept you because you're a member of the family. We love our children, not because they make us proud, but because they're our children. Nobody can take their place in our lives. They don't have to accomplish great, wonderful things to be appreciated. Sure, they may frustrate you from time to time, yet our acceptance is not based on how beautiful our children are, how intelligent, how strong, or how successful they are. We accept them into our family based on the way that we are accepted into God's family. We don't have to earn our way into God's family. We couldn't if we wanted to. We're welcomed as an essential part. We don't want to give the message to anybody in our family that I will love you if or I will love you when. God's love for you is not conditional. We're called to emulate God's unconditional love. We're not here to manipulate others, we're here to restore them. That being said, let me also encourage you that you got to watch what we say to one another. The names that we call each other can affect our whole outlook on life. Children are especially vulnerable to this. The way that children think about themselves can be affected by a word or a wound that they carry with them for the rest of their lives. This is inexcusable behavior for a child of God. Our words can hurt or they can heal. Christians are called to restore other people. We're to bless each other with our words. Paul writes in Galatians 5:15, if you keep on biting and devouring each other, watch out or you will be destroyed by each other. We need to look for ways that we can encourage, compliment, build each other up instead of tearing one another down. Now, there may come a time when we have to confront someone in our home. In fact, conflict may be a part of the healing process. Sometimes we have to care enough to confront, to be a peacemaker instead of a peacekeeper. Love is not letting people do whatever they want, that's cowardice or apathy. A problem will never be healed if it's never confronted. We're called to speak the truth in love. Truth in love. Many families deal with conflict by pretending it doesn't exist. We try to sweep it under the rug. We live in denial rather than enduring the pain of facing the truth and working through the problems. A lot of families are dysfunctional families because they choose to live with unresolved conflicts. They refuse to face them. God's not pleased when we enable someone's destructive behavior. However, our confrontation should always be in the spirit of love. We speak truth in love. We are bent towards retaliation and revenge. When we're hurt, we're tempted to hurt people back. But somewhere, someone has to break the cycle. Somebody has to say, I'm not going to live like this any longer. I'm going to be the one that makes the change, even though I may feel like the other person is more at fault than I am. How else are we going to take the words of Jesus to heart when he said, "Bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you"? I don't know if you've learned this truth or not yet, but every family is a dysfunctional family. But just because we find ourselves in the muck and the mire doesn't mean we have to stay there. We don't have to continue to live in dysfunction. We can do the hard work of getting healthy. We can refuse to allow the sin and the sickness of past generations to affect our current family and home. We can decide there will be no abuse of any kind here, no physical, sexual, or verbal. There'll be no name calling here. There will be no unfaithfulness. No one's going to abuse alcohol or drugs. Other people in our extended family, they decided that they weren't going to work. But we're going to work and make this right. We're going to make sure that the needs of our family are provided for. Others in our family used people for their own agendas. We're going to see every member of this family as someone to be loved as God first loved us. At some point, the patterns of the past generations have to be broken. So determine that your family is going to be the one. Your family is going to bless each other and give worth to each other. Your family is going to be the beginning of a godly line, the beginning of a new generation that will produce healthy and productive people who will be a blessing to the following generation. And lastly, I believe the family is the place where we learn about service. Our homes should be the place that we learn how to live unselfishly. I mean, we have to teach our kids how to share their toys so that as they grow into adulthood, they know how to share the responsibilities of work and home. We learn how to think of the needs of others. We learn how to put others first. We go out of our way to serve, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. 1 Peter 4:1 says, each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others faithfully, administering God's grace in its various forms. We become imitators of God. We participate in his character as we become his servants, administering his grace. We lose our lives in order to gain our lives. We lose ourselves through serving others as we put their needs before our own. Because when we refuse to serve one another, chaos ensues. Dysfunction in the family or on a personal level comes in those moments where I only think about me and what's best for me instead of the family. If we want to have homes that are full of love and thanksgiving, we need to make service a priority. Thankfulness and love grows in the lives of people who have chosen to get their hands dirty by doing acts of service. When we learn how to be servants, we're actually learning how to follow the heart of God. Jesus said about himself, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." We're given the wonderful opportunity this morning to gather at the table because Jesus showed us what it means to live a life of service. What he accomplished at the cross was an act of service. But we also discover that every interaction, every sermon, every moment, Jesus was determined to serve the people that he loved. When we go to the tables, we also have the wonderful opportunity to remember and to rejoice over the blessings and the benefits of his service. We take the bread and we take the cup because we've accepted his offer to be a member of his family. And that is a reason to be thankful. I hope that you have a wonderful season of Thanksgiving and that you get to enjoy the time around the table this morning. Never forget that you are a part of the family of God and he deeply loves you. Go in peace, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.